Back in the early 20th century, there was not a lot of knowledge around medicine, and there were also a lot of very heinous things that were carried out on individuals, women, children, soldiers that are just really hard to talk about. A lot of these were due to experimentation on these individuals. Today, there is a lot of laws and there's a lot of acts that forbid this kind of activity nowadays, but back in the day, that wasn't around. And today what I want to do is talk about some of the most horrific human experiments that have ever taken place in history. So I hope this is something that you guys want to hear about. Sit back, relax, and let's get right into it. Number 1, Unit 731. Unit 731 was based around biological and chemical warfare research and was kind of developed around the Japanese army. This is one of the most horrific acts of human experimentation that I have ever read about. This took place through the Second Sino-Japanese War and also World War II. This involved the cutting off of limbs mostly and just throwing people into terrible situations with flamethrowers and grenades, and also this included pregnant women as well. A lot of prisoners had their limbs amputated and attempted to be reattached to their bodies. Some prisoners actually had body parts frozen and thawed out and trying to be reattached to other people. Many people were injected with syphilis, and other women were raped and given gonorrhea on purpose so that there could have been studies around these types of diseases. These are just some of the most horrific acts that you could ever physically do to other people, and so I put that at number 1. Let's go on to the next one. The Monster Study. This was conducted in 1939 by Wendell Johnson at the University of Iowa. The study was about children, and he would put children into experimental control groups. One group of children was given positive speech therapy, while the other group of children was given negative speech therapy. The negative speech therapy would consist of belittling, screaming, not being taken care of, etc. The children who were given negative speech therapy suffered many psychological effects. They were antisocial, they were very scared children, but one of the most terrible ones was they all developed speech problems, which affected them the rest of their lives just due to this one study by this individual from the University of Iowa. This really just shows you how different our time has changed since the 30s to now in 2016, how far we have come with experimentation and care of children. Next, MKUltra. Back in the 1960s and even the 70s, LSD was legal to obtain. It was put in a lot of medicine. Also, a lot of psychologists would use it to get deeper into their patients' heads and things of that nature. What MKUltra was you could almost say it was a CIA-type mind control research program. It began in the early 1950s and continued all the way through the 60s. This was a group of individuals who were tested upon, and they were trying to see the manipulation of each individual's mental status and their brain function after getting administered LSD. The people that were administered were CIA employees to doctors, to prostitutes, to mentally ill patients, to illiterate patients. And the worst part about this entire thing was they were administered this drug without the subject's knowledge or consent. One of the most memorable studies was a group of people went out to a brothel and obtained a bunch of men from the brothel to bring them back to the study lab and administer them LSD, and all of these men were agreeing because they didn't want to be humiliated about the events that they were actually taking place in. They were given the LSD, and all of the MKUltra files were destroyed after the late 60s. So it's very hard to actually get exact numbers from this study. One of the most terrible things about this is LSD gives you a very altered mental status, and it is said that if you're in a very negative mindset, you're going to have a very bad experience on these hallucinogenic drug. And I can't imagine these people were in the best mindset when they were administered LSD without their knowledge. Therefore, this was probably very scary for a lot of people and also very illegal for a lot of these administrators. Next, I just want to talk about North Korea experiments in general. There were so many of these that I read through, but there were 2 of them that really stood out to me, and I just want to talk about those 2. North Korea is really known for its human right abuse, very much like the Nazis from Germany, and this still kind of continues today even with North Korea. There were many cases of experimentation with prisoners from North Korea. There were 50 healthy women prisoners that were taken from their cells and given poisoned cabbage leaves. They forced these women to eat the poisoned cabbage leaves, even though they really didn't want to. They were crying, they were pleading to actually let them go. But against all of their efforts, they were forced to eat them, and all 20 of the women died within 20 minutes from vomiting blood and excreting blood from many other orifices. They were also told that if they were not to eat the leaves, they would be a disgrace to their families and that they would be shamed for the rest of their lives. Another one has to do with suffocating gas. There was an entire family that was thrown into a chamber full of suffocating gas. A mom, a dad, a daughter, and a son. Reports say that the parents were trying to give the children mouth to mouth as long as they possibly could to keep them alive until they actually ran out of energy themselves and all died in the gas chamber. This just shows you how heinous and how evil people can actually be day to day, even in North Korea today. It may not be as bad today in North Korea as it was back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but you must think if somebody was willing to do this so close to today's date, there has to be some sort of experimentation still taking place in North Korea today that is very similar to what I'm reading right now. And the last one I'm going to talk about today is the syphilis study. There was a lot of studies between the 30s and the 70s due to syphilis, and Alabama was home of one of the most memorable studies there is to date. There was a group of mostly illiterate African Americans that were studied upon by not getting treatment for syphilis. This story is really popular nowadays because it really emphasized patient care in today's society, giving people what they actually need in the medical field. People that enrolled in this study were just told that they had bad blood, and they were going to be receiving free medical treatment, rides to the clinic, meals, and even burial insurance in case they actually died. So many of these people that were really sick had no other option but to join. In the early 30s, treatment for syphilis was extremely toxic, and they really needed to understand the effects of not treating somebody with syphilis and seeing if the body could rid it itself. It's said that there were nearly 400 people that signed up for this test, and at the end of the experiment, only 74 test subjects were still alive. 28 men died specifically by syphilis, 100 died from related complications, and 40 of their wives have also been infected. And it's also documented that 19 children had been born with syphilis as well. Again, this is really setting in stone medical advancements and proper treatment in the medical field today, opposed to back in the day when people would actually just test on people, saying that they were not going to administer medication and seeing what happened in the future, killing multiple people. So you know what, guys, that is what I have for you today. I hope you liked this video on worst experiments ever conducted on humans. I hope that you all liked the video. Leave a like. I will see you guys later.